Doesn't the Nature Conservancy do this kind of stuff all the time? They buy it and it will never be developed. Good on them, right?
Good on them, and good on people who make that investment in the state of Colorado, both as people who may buy a conservation easement or organizations who may buy a conservation easement, and frankly for people who have oftentimes deep roots in a community or to a piece of land where they want to see the traditions and the heritage that their forefathers came into this land preserved.
Then what are you bitching about? What is your problem?
Well, that's how the rules would apply to you or me. Boulder County, they've taken a conservation easement, they bought it as open space, and now they're talking about taking those 40 acres and transferring them to Public Works so that the Boulder County Public Works team can develop a 40-acre, massively intensive industrial waste factory.
So when I was a kid, my family used to listen to the Kingston Trio, and there was a song about Charlie and the MTA. He got stuck on the subway, and he didn't have the extra dime to get off. And it began with this prelude of, this could happen to you. And this, well, we're going to talk about could happen to you. Rob O'Day is a resident of Boulder County who has been, well, interfered with, I guess would be the right way to say, by Boulder County, who wants to pervert what the purpose of open space is. Rob, thanks for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
All right, as background, since I live up in that area, like much of Colorado, but even more so in Boulder County and Boulder City, we are open spaced crazed. The city of Boulder owns, two and a half times its own size in open space around it. It is something that Boulderites treasure. They go into debt for. And on the county level, they do the same thing. And what's the purpose of this open space?
Open space has several purposes in Boulder County. First and foremost is to preserve the agrarian culture of the area and some of its exceptional farmlands. It's to create a more rural feel and buffer as people enter the county and transit the county. And it's to prevent the county from being overdeveloped.
And so a lot of the open space is parkland that we can go play on and hike on and run with our dogs and do all that other good stuff. On the county level, they also own a lot of farmland that is still being farmed. And if I understand it correctly, the idea is the county pays them or bought their farmland, I don't know what it is. You can farm on it, that's all.
Right, so what happens generally, and very specifically on the parcel of land we'll talk about today, the county takes an evaluation and inventory of all the open undeveloped land in the region, and when they find an exceptional piece, and there are certain criteria for exceptional, they take the extraordinary act, their words, an extraordinary act, of allocating taxpayer money that's earmarked for the purchase and preservation of open lands, and they will purchase a conservation easement, a perpetual conservation easement. It's an agreement where the title of the property is tied up, forever says it may not be developed, and it may only be used for certain very specific passive uses, agriculture, passive recreation, and for the enjoyment of the family that owns the land. In this case...
And does the family still own the land? The farmer still owns the land? Does he get paid not to develop it, basically?
So if there's a conservation easement, yes. And it's a perpetual conservation easement. So it may never be wiped away or ignored. In the case where we're working on, there is a situation where the county said, these 40 acres have such extraordinary value to the community that not only are we going to use taxpayer money to purchase a perpetual conservation easement to protect this ag land, but we're going to take it a step further and we're going to buy the land outright and own it forever as open space.
Okay, sounds good to me.
No commercial use, wonderful, protected, can never be developed.
Doesn't the Nature Conservancy do this kind of stuff all the time? They buy it and it will never be developed. Good on them, right?
Good on them, and good on people who make that investment in the state of Colorado, both as people who may buy a conservation easement or organizations who may buy a conservation easement, and frankly for people who have oftentimes deep roots in a community or to a piece of land where they want to see the traditions and the heritage that their forefathers came into this land preserved.
Then what are you bitching about? What is your problem?
Well, that's how the rules would apply to you or me. Boulder County has said we have an objective to be a zero waste county by 2025. So we will not take any of our waste outside of the county border. So they've taken a conservation easement, they bought it as open space, and now they're talking about taking those 40 acres and transferring them to Public Works so that the Boulder County Public Works team can develop a 40-acre, massively intensive industrial waste factory.
Not a factory to create waste.
A composting facility.
All right. Well,
Because
help me understand.
Composting is good, right? Like puppies, ice cream,
Right.
babies. Nobody objects to compost. You think about, oh, this is great. I've got some table
I thought you
scraps.
were going to say
I'll put them out.
composting puppies. No, that's a bad thing. Composting
is.
puppies. So let me see if I understand it. We, the people, bought this land to conserve it forever.
Even worse, we paid a lot of money to perpetually conserve the land with a conservation easement.
That says you cannot.
Then we went even further and took the even more extraordinary step of buying it outright as we the people for perpetual protection and non-commercial use, non-development. These are lands, mind you, that are certified by the USDA as being lands of national significance, extremely nutrient rich. This is the best agricultural land the country has, certified by the federal government.
Listen, hippie. We want to be waste neutral. So obviously we've got to compost something, and so we're gonna do it there. We already own the land, so let's build a composting facility. 40 acres? It takes 40 acres?
It would take a much smaller piece of land if they weren't on such an aggressive path to compost. We're talking about out of the gate, the county wants to haul into the county from all over 50,000 tons of compost a year. And you say, oh, 50,000 tons? Let me rephrase it. That's 100 million pounds a year of waste that they want to truck
100 million.
100 million pounds. And again, 100 million pounds, maybe that's a lot, I don't know. Let me put it another way. 40,000 Toyota Prius weigh the same as what they want to truck in.
40,000 Priuses.
40,000 Priuses.
And Priuses are heavy. They
If
got a
you
battery.
lined them up end to end, you could walk from the site where the Boulder County wants to do this to downtown Aspen on the top of the Priuses. That many every year. They want to truck that much manure from ag lands, human sewage from treatment facilities, and rotting food waste. And they want to truck it into this facility and process it in their new state-of-the-art factory
All right.
on open space land.
All right. I see a couple of issues. You've laid out the issue of, wait a second, you can't do it on the land. This is what's so beautiful about government, that if a private person did that, they'd go to jail because you can't build on that land. That's perpetually. So we got that issue that you can't do it there. And then let me ask you about what it is they're trying to get done. So they want, what a wonderful goal to compost. What a wonderful thing to be waste neutral, I suppose. And I'm sure they're going to say what they always say in these type of infrastructure buys, which is, and it's good for the economy, it's going to pay for itself, we're going to even make money off of it as other people bring this stuff in. What's wrong with having a compost facility there? If If it was private land and a private person said, hey, I want to sell it, the county's going to buy it, build it, then you would be happy about it, would you not?
No. There are certain places that are appropriate to deal with waste at that scale. And fortunately for this part of Colorado, we already have facilities like this way out on the eastern plains, not far from here as the crow flies, about 30 miles from the site where the county is doing it. And unfortunately across the county lines, otherwise it would satisfy the county's need to compost their waste. What the county is saying is we're going to take, in addition to the $2 million we've spent on this land in this hideous bait and switch that they're inflicting on the taxpayers, they're now saying we're also going to take about $10 million of capital from our sustainability tax proceeds, and we're going to build this factory and then use that to draw people in. They're then going to charge a tipping fee for everybody who wants to dump compost there, whether they're a commercial hauler. Oh wait, a commercial hauler. You can't do commercial projects on open space or conservation easements. So
all right, we've already covered that.
You've got an issue there. So then they're going to bring all this waste in because it will reduce their carbon footprint of trucking the waste from Boulder to their current facility in Keensburg.
Mind you, we're going to have electric trucks pretty soon. That's not going to be an issue. Talk to me about the lovely scent of a composting facility. Now, while it's near where you live, it's even more close to where other people live, right?
Yeah, and you raise a great point. So there's a range of impacts of composting at this scale. Composting at a small scale, a small backyard compost activity tied to a garden, a small local farmer, that sort of compost is wonderful. It's very low impact, very positive results, very efficient. At the scale of industrial composting that the county is proposing with 100 million pounds of waste a year being brought in, it's extraordinarily intensive, has tremendous impact on water quality. Some of the byproducts of composting at this scale are formaldehyde and benzene. Nothing wrong with that. And they've chosen a parcel that is bounded by the Leggett Ditch. So you have tons of agricultural use downstream from this industrial scale
so an
waste
irrigation
facility.
Ditch is right next to it. I asked you about the smell.
It will smell bad too.
How do you
me.
know it will smell bad? There's one in New York. Isn't there one like in New York City or right outside?
There's
If you can do it there, you can certainly do it in Boulder.
Right. That's what we've asked. And interestingly, when we had our first meeting with the county, we raised the question of, hey, will this have an odor impact? They said, nah, no odor impact. Like, okay, not sure how we're going to process 100 million pounds of manure and sewage a year without an odor impact. But they said, hey, we have this fantastic high-tech Gore technology, like a Gore-Tex jacket, and we're going to cover it and it won't smell at all. Like, okay, well, where can we go see a facility like this to see what the odor impacts are like? They all kind of look at each other like, I said, which facilities have you been to? They haven't. So the county hasn't ever visited a site like this. They haven't operated one.
So we don't know.
Their consultants haven't operated one. But there is one in Delaware that's only 27 acres versus the 40, processes less a year. And after thousands of complaints, that one was shut down by the state because the odor impacts were so horrific, it affected thousands of residents.
Couple little bits that I want to get to, make sure we have time for, which is I know how these things work in local government. If there's going to be a change to land use, the neighbors are warned about it for public hearings, and they're asked their input. It's the stakeholders process. And in Colorado, we're big on stakeholder processes. So
we're so big on stakeholder process in Boulder County that Boulder County chose to notify 12 people of this project.
12?
No joke, 12 people.
12
They
people.
noticed 12 people for a $10 million, 100 million pound a year manure factory.
12 neighbors, they said, who's this going to impact that we should get their input?
Right.
12.
And we're still, Dale Case, the planning head for the county, through Cora, we've discovered, actively said, one of the staffers said, hey, we should notify the private school, Dawson School, that's just up the way, just outside of that 1,500-foot minimum. And we should notify some of the other neighbors, like the neighborhood that's just downwind.
So
in
the
Erie.
technocrats inside the department
said
wanted
no.
to do good government.
Some did.
Right.
The head of planning said,
And when you said,
absolutely.
Cora, this is an Open Records Act, so you're trying to get the open records to show that these guys, our officials, intentionally kept it really tight, so 12 people.
And what's particularly insidious about this, John, Boulder County is the landowner, the developer, the applicant, the receiver of the applicant, the reviewer of the applicant, the planning commission, the approver, the check writer, and the operator.
Anywhere else, that is a sign of communism, that the check and balance is themselves. So they apply to themselves, they approve themselves, and they get it. All right.
And they charge us to gain access to what's going on. So when they had their first meeting, they notified the 12 people. We showed up, we had a quick meeting. They said, look, nothing to worry about. This is a very preliminary meeting, very early in the process. Nothing's been decided. We don't know if we're going to develop this. Nothing to worry about. We just want to get your input. 5 days later, they delivered to themselves a 250-page application complete with all their consultant reports, all their architecture plans, everything
And
fully baked.
they gave that plan, that thing, to 200 pages to all 12 members.
Of course not.
All right. Real fast, I got to do this quickly. The incestuousness, and I mean this directly, is incredible in that the waste facilities is called EcoCycle. The city, I have to pay taxes, it goes to EcoCycle. I have to pay property taxes to go to do this stuff. Who runs EcoCycle?
So there's two entities. There's the county that's operating as the county, and their public works team is going to build and operate this. We have yet to get a straight answer from the county who the actual operator is. We're concerned about that because the county doesn't operate businesses, yet they're going to create an industrial facility that somebody is going to have to operate as a commercial business, and yet they won't tell us who that's going to be. That's a problem. Sitting right next door is EcoCycle, as you mentioned, within the city of Boulder. They are run by the identical twin sister. Their executive director, Suzanne Jones, is the identical twin sister to the chair of the Boulder County Commission, Elise Jones. Elise and her cohort, Deb Gardner, were the ones pushing, as we've discovered through open records requests, they're the ones that have been pushing staff to get this done, get this done, get this done before the end of 2020. When they noticed neighbors and put their own application in, they had a 90-day timeline for final approval on a land use application that is extraordinarily complex.
That is really short, isn't it?
If you or I were to do this, or a private entity were to do this, it would be a years-long process, guaranteed. If the federal government wanted to do this on a piece of land that they were bound by a conservation easement, they would actually need an act of Congress to approve it. Boulder County.
This is why, and let's leave it at this, that the most corruption in Colorado doesn't happen at the state house or the Senate. It happens in your own backyard with local and county governments. The cronyism is insane, and the self-serving is insane.
And what's really dangerous about this, and why there are thousands of people who have now gotten behind this movement to stop this project, is not so much just the direct, immediate, and awful impacts of the facility, but the precedent that the county is threatening to set by erasing conservation easements and developing on open space land could have horrible detrimental impacts across the entire state of Colorado.
Let me repeat that back to you, see if I got it right. That if they're allowed to pull off this scam, that if they can pervert open space into a commercial facility, whether it's government-owned and run or privately owned and run, it means that every parcel of open space in Colorado is potentially a victim of the same scam. So even if you don't live in Boulder County, you're not a resident, you're not a taxpayer, you ought to care about this, because this could happen to you in the open space you love.
The same week that they filed their own application to themselves to develop on their open space land, they went to court against the oil and gas industry to keep them from developing on a conservation easement that the county owns. You think they're watching this?
Oh, that is delicious. Yeah, so
It's absolutely insidious.
Rob, thank you for standing up for some principle up there. I know it's tough, and you're running up against a Leviathan, and it's really hard to do that. If people don't understand how incestuous and corrupt Boulder County is, this is the kind of stuff that's par for the course. Keep up the fight. Oh, people want to know more about it. Where do they go?
ProtectRainbowOpenSpace.org.
Protect rainbowopenSpace.org. And you've created a not-for-profit.
We have a nonprofit. People can make donations. Be wonderful to have the support of people from around the community. Like I said, we have thousands of people who have already flocked to this site.
And what's so wild is all you want to do is protect the open space, which is a value of Boulderites in the city and the county throughout.
If the open space is abused and the county is allowed to do this, it undermines the ability of taxpayers to support more open space and their willingness to support it for generations. It's a horrible, horrible plan.
Which is why we need to privatize all open space. I'll work on that one later. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.